Hey, hey, hey.
It's Regina
And Teresa coming live to you from
Lewiston, Maine,
and Olive Branch, Mississippi. All right, Regina. Welcome, Sojourners. We're so glad you're here.
Woo! Welcome, tribe.
All right, we're jumping right in today. You know what time it is?
What time is it, girl?
Time for We're Not Really Strangers.
All right.
Okay, this question is for everybody. Sojourners, Regina, and me. Are you an early Christmas shopper or a last-minute Christmas shopper?
Early Christmas shopper, except for right now. I don't know what just happened.
In the world?
I don't know, but I am an early Christmas shopper, except for this year, and I am behind because of the contract.
It looks like you're ready for New Year's with all that fireworks behind you.
I don't know what that was, but okay, that's how it works in the studio.
This is awesome. Completely awesome. Well, I am a last-minute Christmas shopper, and most often December 23rd and 24th.
Oh, my word, no. I usually have mine done by Thanksgiving.
Let's add to the stress.
Yeah. All right.
We have a deal at my house. 17 years of marriage. My husband hates to shop. And that's my mom. We're in her studio today and her phone's ringing. Anyway, my husband hates to shop. And so we have a deal. I don't ask him to shop with me all year long. But when we Christmas shop, one day he cannot complain and he just has to go and carry bags.
All right. That's cool. I do a lot of mine online. But I want to hear what the tribe does.
Yes.
What do you do, tribe?
Sojourners, how are you making it so far with your Christmas shopping?
Are you early shoppers or last minute shoppers? Drop it in the comments. Hey, you know what? Today is Hot Topic Tuesday. And have we got a topic today?
Regina, we do. And we've had a lot of fun working on this podcast. And today we're going to bring a little more seriousness to this in with our job, because our job is a very important, serious job. And although we like to have a lot of fun while we're doing it, we also need to consider for us on the podcast all the aspects of nursing. And so what we're talking today about is substance abuse. So Regina, what are your thoughts off the top just about substance abuse and nursing?
You know, I mean, I don't really know how to answer that right off the bat. You know, immediately when we say it, you know, pictures begin to roll through my mind of patients that I've taken care of, people that I know. And, you know, I think sometimes as nurses and maybe society, Teresa, maybe we begin, I think, to see it as just this, you are a problem. And you are no longer a patient or a person. And I don't think we're looking at it the right way. I think there's so many different perspectives to come at this topic. This is such a heavy topic. But let me give you a little bit of some numbers. Okay?
Sounds great.
So this is from 2023. This is from this year. This is the National Center for Drug Abuse statistics. And this is what it says. And some of these numbers are like, wow. So among Americans ages 12 years old and up, 37.309 million people are current illegal drug users as of the year 2020. 59,277 million people or 21.4% of people 12 years old and older have used illegal drugs or misused a prescription drug in the last year. 138,543 million, or 50% of age 12 and older, have illicitly used drugs in their lifetime. And then my last stat is this, and this is from the U.S. News and World Report. This is August the 15th of this year. 2/3 of Americans say that their lives have been affected by someone with a drug addiction. And so, Teresa, I think, those numbers, they show that, substance abuse affects everybody. Mm-hmm. It's not just this person on the stretcher. It's affecting us as a society. It is affecting our friends and our families. I see it. I've seen it in my friends' lives. I've seen it in my own family's life. Mm-hmm. And it affects us as nurses. And we have said from the beginning that this podcast is faith-based. But whether you are faith-based or not, as a nurse, it's my job, it is your job to care for whomever walks through that door, no matter what they have done or what they are currently doing. Mm-hmm. And when I thought of that, I don't know if you've heard this before. There's this poem, and when I read it, it impacts me every single time. And it says this: I am an ex-convict. I have AIDS. I'm a prostitute. I'm poor. I'm old. I aborted my baby. I'm a teen mom. I'm an alcoholic, a beggar. I am a drug user. I have cancer. I have a contagious disease. But the nurse says, I'll take care of you.
Wow. What's the name of that poem and who wrote that? Do you know?
I could not find the author of that. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see the title for that, but it's just a quote I've seen it multiple times, and every time it hits me so hard.
That is powerful. It just made me tear up just now. I think let's drop that poem in the chat so we can all copy that if we wanted to. We'll put a copy of that in the chat. Sure. I've never heard that, but that will touch you for sure. Mm-hmm. I think those statistics you read they're astronomical. So just think of it: 2 out of 3 people. So we're 2 people. Mm-hmm. Add one more person. Mm-hmm. 2 of the 3 would have experienced a loved one or a family member and been affected by substance abuse. And listen, you guys know this. As nurses, we are not immune to this either. At all. And as a matter of fact, there's probably a better opportunity for nurses to, utilize substances just because what we have access to. Mm-hmm. And so this topic, substance abuse, it is heavy for sure. And just in us preparing for this topic, there's so many different ways that we could spin this, but you and I both felt the conviction that it is where we want to come from, is how we're treating these patients and their family members. We also learn the family members are our patients also. We take care of everybody that we can in the room. And so that includes, the mom or the dad or the brother or sister at the bedside. And we all can have this burnout. I mean, go back to nursing school and we learned about monitor fatigue. We all can have this burnout because 2 out of 3 people, just think of that. Like that's the patients that we have is, coming in the ER. These patients don't always get admitted, but sometimes, they do. I would probably say about 50% of the time they are admitted into the hospital to help with withdrawal symptoms or, if they've overdosed. I mean, all kinds of things. So I think as believers, we have said this so many times, we just are called to be the hands and feet of Christ. And so what we want to dive into today is how do we do that in these scenarios? But one thing that I wanted to talk about before we dive into that is this new drug that I've learned about on this new assignment that I'm at. And it's not, I'm not saying it's not in other places in the United States. I'm just saying I have not come across it yet. And it's called xylazine, and it's a horse tranquilizer. And it's not an opioid, but often it is used with fentanyl and also other substances. In addition to the fentanyl, you could be looking at cocaine, heroin, benzos, alcohol, gabapentin. They are using methadone, and then even your prescribed opioids. So I just thought it would be interesting to share a little bit of what I've learned about this, and I'm still learning a lot about it, but it's a drug that's injected, and wherever it's injected, what they're seeing is necrotic tissue appear. And so the other thing that is important about this drug is that it is not a narcotic, but the treatment for this overdose often does include Narcan because of the drugs that it's mixed with. So you may Narcan your patient and not get a response because of the xylazine. So there's so many things you still have to look for and be aware of. So back to the necrotic tissue as well, it's associated with skin ulcers, abscesses, and also related complications. And so they're injecting, snorting, swallowing, and inhaling xylazine. And so I just think, I don't know, are you guys familiar with xylazine? Have you seen it? Drop it in the chat. We want to know what experiences you've had, what symptoms you're seeing. Have you seen these necrotic sores and places? Tell us what you think about this. But I think it's very important that we do stay up to date, especially when you're talking about the reversal of these drugs. How do we reverse this? And there's not a reversal for the xylazine, unfortunately. And so the danger in this drug is not just the overdose, but then you're looking at the necrotic tissue and the necrotic area, and then you're looking at sepsis, and then you're looking at, is this patient going to survive or not? Right. And so it's very serious, and I wanted to just bring it up. I wanted to see what you guys sojourners have seen and what you know about it. Drop it in the chat. We want to hear.
Right. Yeah, Teresa, when you brought that to me, that was not one that I had heard of. So yeah. That was new. That was new for me as well. So that's not something I've seen where I've been. Mm-hmm. So I
mentioned it. I'm sorry.
I'm curious to hear what other nurses have, if they've heard of that, if they witnessed it, or if that's just something that they see in their practice.
Or if you've been trained on it at work, have you done an education on it? Where is the United States in this drug? Because from what I've read, it's a lot in the Northeast. 2015 to 2020, all drug overdose deaths involving xylazine increased from 2% to 26% in Philadelphia.
Wow.
And then it was also involved in 19% of all drug overdoses in Maryland in 2021 and 10% in Connecticut in 2020. So, it's something that we're seeing and are beginning to see. And a lot of the nurses where I'm at currently have already seen these necrotic areas from this. I mentioned it last night. I'm in Olive Branch at my mom's for a Christmas banquet with her, and I mentioned it last night to some people at the banquet. And interestingly enough, one lady had heard of it and knew about it.
Wow.
Yeah, but I mean, this is completely new to me since I've been in Vermont.
It pay, we have to, as nurses, we have to stay up to date. We may not know every single thing about every single thing, but in the ER, you have to know a little bit about everything. That's a little bit different than, some other things, but so it's helpful, I think, to know that type of information. So one thing that you said is that we have, and we heard this before, is that, hang on a minute, I don't know if am I on your screen, Teresa? Hey, Teresa.
I'm sorry, I blanked out. I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry.
Hi.
I'm not seeing myself. There
We're having
are.
some issues here.
Having a few issues today, but that's okay.
Did that just blank you out completely?
I think you did, but that's okay. I'm back now. So I remember my thoughts. So I got it. It's all right.
Okay.
One of the things you said.
Let's go.
One of the things you said at the start was how we get monitor fatigue, or some of the call bells go off all the time and monitors go off all the time. And sometimes it's not that you tune them out, but it becomes so much part of the background that it's just part of the environment. And so you had said that about, well, what about patients? Do you get patient fatigue if we're seeing the same patients or type of patients over and over and over? Does that bring about a fatigue as well? I wanted to kind of speak to that. How do we show compassion and not become jaded? Because we see some of these patients every week or every other week, and we see them so often, we know them by name, but that's not even the big deal. We see them so often, they know us by name. That is something. And, so I guess that's my question. How do we not become jaded toward the drug abuse patient? And how do we continue to have compassion when we see this all of the time? And I think that, Teresa, we have to see them not like an inconvenience, but as a person, a real person. There's so many things. I think sometimes it's easy to forget because we're in the middle of our shift, and maybe it's just me, and that's okay if it is, but maybe we're in the middle of our shift and we've got tasks that we have to do. We have patients we have to see, and we have, and this is one of our patients. And I think it's easy, regardless of the patient, sometimes I think it's easy to forget that there's so many things that can happen to us that is totally out of our control. And we're just sometimes we're left to handle things on our own. And this is my opinion, but I don't believe that the patient just stood up one day and said, hey, I think I'm just going to be a drug addict. It don't happen like that.
Right.
I think there were many roads and many journeys and many circumstances that went before that, that occurred, that brought that person to this day, to where they're at today. And I know we have to have healthy boundaries when we're dealing with patients, any patients. We have to have healthy boundaries in relationships, and of course in at work and with our patients. But we also have to move with compassion and with mercy. that
Yeah,
pain. Yeah.
for sure.
Sure.
And I'm just thinking about some patients I recently had, how, I mean, we see all ages of patients that come in, from, 12-year-olds to 60, 70-year-olds that have come in. Maybe it was an accidental drug overdose, but they're all ages. This is affecting everybody. And I was just thinking of one particular case I had, or one particular patient, where, when they come in and they're coming in for an overdose, and then they're stabilized. In the process of stabilizing that patient, a lot of things are not rational in the room, right? The patient isn't coming from a rational place at that moment. They're under the influence, and so you're going to have different actions from the patient. And I specifically remember one patient telling me, "You better get out of my room or I'm going to hit you." And I'm like, and he's like, "And I will do it. I'm telling you right now." And at that moment, I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to get out of the room."
Right.
I'm not going to choose to be abused. How in that moment, what was it in that moment that allowed me to exit the room, but still care about that patient, and try to find a way to get in with that patient where I would be able to communicate with him? And I'm going to tell you right now, it was only the Holy Spirit that came and allowed me to, because when you're threatened with your own safety, that's a whole different issue that you're talking about. But I mean, I was fearful to go back in that room. And part of how I communicate with patients is we got to get on an even level somehow. So I have to come to your level at that moment of where we can communicate, for communication. And we have to feel a bond. I have a pastor friend of mine who for 30 years, he has been saying this. He still preaches this. People don't care what you know until they know how much you care. And so I have to be able to establish that bond with my patient where they feel I am truly invested in them. And I'm just saying, for me, a lot of that time comes from the Holy Spirit. And also this is in addition to the Holy Spirit is still involved in every bit of this, but, God has extended so much grace and mercy to me in my life, so much. And so one thought I often try to keep in mind in my head is, oh, but for the grace of God, there go I. That patient could be my son. That patient could be my daughter. It could be my mom. It could be my brother. And it is somebody's son, daughter, dad, brother. So how do we, where is it that it comes from within us? And what is it that the Holy Spirit does and says to us that allows us to still have compassion with these patients?
Yeah, I was going to say that same thing. That when I look at the patient on the stretcher, I have to, and I think this would be true for any illness that we're looking at. But specifically today, we're talking about drug addiction. So I think it's important that we look at them and say, somewhere his mom is crying her eyes out every night.
Absolutely.
Somewhere there's a wife and she is in anguish. Somewhere there are kids that are scared to death of their dad. And we probably have all been patients before in a medical setting. And so I have to go, well, what if that was me? What would I want? What would I want you to do if it was me on the stretcher in that condition? I think I would just want you to see me as a person that has had whatever has occurred that has brought me to this day. And I'm just this person that happens to have this illness.
Absolutely. Because it gets often, and even in my own verbiage, I have at times been so frustrated and said, these patients choose to do this. They choose to use drugs, and then they come in and then puts us in a place that our heart could be hardened. We could become like Pharaoh, and I don't want a hardened heart. I don't. My prayer daily is that God will use me in my job to make a difference in one person's life, even if it's just one person. I want to make a difference in everybody's life, but even if it's just one person. I was at a funeral one time, and the parent of this daughter said to me, if anybody comes to Christ because of this, then it was worth it. And that was stated to me almost 30 years ago, almost.
Wow.
And I have never forgotten that. I can put myself in that place at that cemetery, standing there with him and him saying that. And I just thought, I had a new baby at the time. Maybe she was 2. It was my first child, and she may have been 2. I don't recall. She was very young. And I remember thinking, what a faith that was for somebody to be able to say that. And that I hope that I would be like that. But I don't know if I could or not. But through the Holy Spirit. So when I think about this and in researching, we always are trying to bring a Bible verse to our discussions, and how God instructs us or leads us. And for this particular topic for me, Romans 15:1 is what really hit my heart. And I'm reading this from the Amplified Version. Now we who are strong in our convictions and faith ought to patiently put up with the weaknesses of those who are not strong and not just please ourselves. That is a call to just love people.
Yeah. Agreed. Totally agree. Teresa, I think we said this in the last podcast or one of our podcasts we've already done, but it was something we said where when we are serving and we are having that compassion, taking care of people, we are moving in the same line. We're exhibiting those Christ-like characteristics. Nurses serve. It is what we do. And we say, as believers, and you and I say it on here, and you said it earlier in this podcast today, that we want to be the hands and feet of Christ. And how in the world are we going to do that? In the face of whatever you want to call it, in the face of such despair and such anguish and just all of those emotions that go with that. How do we do that? And so this verse came to me today as I was thinking about this. This is Matthew chapter 25, verse 36 through 40. This is the English Standard Version. And it says this: I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. As I read that verse, it moves me with such an emotion. When we look on the patient as the person, with compassion and grace, I think we're walking in just the very heartbeat of Jesus. I know there's a lot of things that have to be done for the person with substance abuse, but I got into nursing to make a difference at a critical time in people's lives. And when we stand there and we exhibit mercy and we exhibit care and we exhibit grace, even if they don't say it, we're imparting into that life for just a moment, and we're impacting it for just a moment. And it could be that very key moment that helps them reach a turning point.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so important now in the face of drug abuse that nurses don't ever underestimate what you do. You make a difference.
Absolutely, Regina. What a great verse for this topic, and for our life just in general. So I think that we, as nurses, have to remember that we are there to care for people. Exactly what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
And so on Friday, we want you guys to tune in, because we are going to hear from some people. We're going to hear from a specialist and some family members and some professionals who also, they're not nurses, but they do help in the care of these patients. We want to show how our care helps people, because as nurses, we have a limited view, right? We have maybe a 2 or 3, 4 hour stay in the ER, maybe a day or two stay in inpatient for withdrawal. Then the patient goes on. But what I want to see and hear about is the continual care of these patients, and how what we start in the hospital by being the hands and feet of Christ, and how that continues to help these patients and where they can go. So guys, tune in Friday for an episode. You're not going to want to miss it.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us today. Leave your thoughts, whatever comments in the chat. We would love to hear from you as well, from everybody. And that's what makes this podcast so special, is we've got all kinds of people listening and helping and shaping. So nurses, healthcare team, healthcare heroes, you make a difference. And so rock on. You can do it.